Good morning, everyone, and welcome to The Voice of Authority, brought to you today by Willmott Dixon. My name is Toby Fox. I'm the Managing Director at 3Fox, which is the marketing agency for councils. And our job is to keep our network of councils and developers and investors and their influencers and advisors connected. And one of the ways that we do that is through this online channel, The Voice of Authority. It's a platform for councils to discuss their ambitions and challenges and influences and issues of urgency. And on that, since 2015, my company 3Fox has been producing workshops and seminars and publications encouraging councils to grow their own capacity to deliver new homes. Now we're told by UCL that only 10 councils are not actively engaged in directly delivering new homes. And we want to shine a light on best practice and encourage knowledge sharing to continue that growth. So to help with that, we set up the Direct Delivery Awards, which took place in May this year for the first time. And Oxford City Council and its company OX Place won the inaugural JLL Rising Stars of Direct Delivery Award, and we met them to investigate the secrets of their success last month. And you can watch the video of that discussion on our YouTube channel now. But today we're going to meet the other inaugural winner, Be First, the company established by London Borough of Barking and Dagenham and recognised in May as the Willmott Dixon Direct Delivery Team of the Year. Be First is delivering 2,678 new homes by 2024, of which 2,133 are affordable, with no fewer than 50,000 more planned. Sister company Reside is managing 821 properties for rent to working people on lower wages. That's 65 to 80% of the market rate. And the council also has a GLA estate renewal of 150 homes and a commercial acquisition strategy across all asset classes. Now, in winning this award, the Be First team fended off stiff competition from Birmingham, who were in second place, and Bristol in third. And then in equal fourth place, we had Cornwall and the London Borough of Southwark, with London Borough of Enfield not far behind in fifth. So some really powerful programs that they were up against, and we're going to find out how they beat them, how they did that, and how they overcame the challenges of governance and nurtured the relationship with their shareholder, Barking and Dagenham Council, and how the business case for development has evolved and where they found supportive partners, and much more besides. To answer those questions, it's a delight to welcome to the Voice of Authority Jenny Coombs, who is Head of Affordable Housing at Be First. And to quiz Jenny, it's a pleasure to invite to join us one of our esteemed and knowledgeable Direct Delivery Awards judges, Barbara Brownlee, the CEO at Soho Housing Association. Hello, Barbara. Now, we were planning on being joined by Mark Crane from Be First and Mira Beddy from the Barnett's Open Door Homes organisation. However, they've been overtaken by events, as we say. So I'm afraid you're going to have to do with me as a shoddy stand-in. I'm going to do my best to fill some big shoes. But I doubt I'll have to do much, because you're going to be firing in questions via the Q&A, and we're going to welcome your observations in the chat as well. And we've got a few questions for you via the online survey function, so you can contribute to the discussion by answering those as they pop up onto your screens over the next hour. And I'm going to start by getting one of those going to get you into the mood. So we're going to ask you about the scale of your own delivery programs, viewers, to get a feel for who's out there in the audience. And while you're responding to that poll, I'm going to turn straight to Jenny to lead us off. Jenny, can you set the scene for the discussion by describing what you've achieved at Be First and what makes you such a worthy Direct Delivery Team of the Year winner?
Thanks, Toby. Well, yeah, I mean, it's absolutely lovely to win an award, but obviously that puts a certain amount of pressure on us to continue to do what we've been doing so far. So just a little potted history about Be First. We were set up as a wholly owned company by Barking and Dagenham and launched in 2017. The idea for Be First came from a growth commission that the council put together a couple of years before that. The growth commission really teased out the fact that we had huge opportunities for delivery across Barking and Dagenham, but that we weren't structured correctly really to make the right sort of moves forward to deliver a large programme. And So in October 17, what were the planning, the development management policy, my team, sort of the estates affordable housing team, direct delivery, the regeneration team and the capital delivery teams, which are our construction within the council, which was about 57 people transferred into Be First. And we've been there obviously for 5 years and have had some success in our delivery programme, not without its challenges, as I think we've all had those challenges throughout the last few years. But our overarching aim was to do that and also to return a surplus to the council, which we've been able to do. So around our sort of stats, yes, we've got nearly 3,000 in our programme, around 2/3 of that are affordable. We do actually deliver right down to target rent for Reside as well, Toby. So that's something that, you know, I think people see Reside and what we're delivering as an intermediate to affordable rent programme, but it isn't. We deliver target rent. A lot of what we do is re-provision on our estates programme. So obviously that has to be at those sort of levels. And that goes to people that are on the council's register. And there's still around 7,000 people on the housing register in Barking and Dagenham. So still really considerable challenges, as also in terms of other deprivation indices as well, which is why we have to do that balance and get those low rent properties into our programme as well. We've also got coming forward some London Living Rent stuff in our programme, London Affordable Rent Shared Ownership, and our affordable rent product, which is at 80% of market. We are doing very little private rented, and we have no private for sale in our schemes, and that's really to do with the values that we have against the construction costs in our area. So I'd like to say that we were going to deliver that 50,000 figure that you mentioned, but that's not just us. That's obviously the overarching figure. But what we do in addition to the direct delivery programme is obviously work across a lot of areas in the borough that are regeneration and transformation areas to help to deliver that 50,000 figure in terms of what our planning teams do around master planning and the promotion of those types of areas. I think it's quite well documented now that since we've been in Be First, our planning performance is second to none, best in class, and that's been really useful to us. We also have an in-house consultancy team which support our delivery, and more recently a very large design team coming forward so that we ensure that all of the quality of the product that we produce is top notch. We've brought in around £7.3 million worth of seal. That's a stat I got yesterday, which is a good one. And as I say, we're now about 117 in our team in Be First. So sort of outside of the resi stuff, I think some of the things that I want to bring out are around the sort of regeneration and transformation areas, and, you know, things like projects like the film studio, the data centre, the Pearl Centre. I mean, if anybody's not been to Barking and Dagenham recently, I would urge you to join one of our regeneration tours that go out, I think, monthly, but I don't think they're actually going at the moment. I think they're restarting in the new year. But if anyone's got a spare couple of hours and they want to come east, come and have a look, because there's some great stuff happening, and it really gives you a real clear snapshot of the direction of what we've been doing.
So Jenny, to do that, should they contact you, or
if you go onto the Be First website, there's normally a link that you can click on, and it's like one of those Eventbrite things where it takes you to a ticket that you can book for free, and you can come along and join the tour. And you would also see, if you come along on that tour, some of the riverside areas, the new station, and things like the city markets, etc. sites. Nothing there yet, although it's just, as I say, it's gone through, the consent's gone through Parliament. So that's just sort of a bit of a snapshot. I hope that's enough to do a bit of scene setting for everybody.
Yeah, absolutely. Just going back to one of the things you said that the council wasn't structured correctly to deliver the programme you wanted to deliver. Can you fill in what was misaligned or what was missing?
I think we had the ambition, but not necessarily the bums on seats, really. The resources. You need a fair amount of people to deliver a programme with the ambition that we've got. Whilst we were in the council, obviously the council are under huge financial pressures. There was never going to be the budget to be able to do that. By setting us up in the way that we're set up, we've been able to expand, get the right resources in, and the professional serve, the sort of the range of professionals that you need to do that, to be also to be able to pay market salaries, to be able to sort of just be on a level playing field with the people and the quality of people that you need to deliver that type of program.
Fantastic. Thanks, Jenny. Now, viewers, I'm sure you got loads of questions for Jenny, so fire them in. What do you want to know about how BFirst has achieved what it's achieved? But Barbara, I know you're super keen to get your own questions in, so over to you.
Thanks, Toby. That is so interesting, Jenny. It's absolutely impossible not to be deeply impressed with what has happened in Barking and Dagenham. It really is. And I've got a major sort of desire to know, really, what do you think has made the difference in Barking and Dagenham, almost to the rest of London, really? If you go through our runners and riders, as Toby did at the beginning, and who came from 2nd to 5th, Barking and Dagenham stand out London Borough. And it's clearly been difficult for some London boroughs to get there, even though they've tried. And I just wonder what you think that magic ingredient or ingredients are in Barking and Dagenham.
So I had to think about this obviously in advance, and I think the recipe for me is that we had a very pro-growth council to start off with very strong political leadership, and Darren Rodwell as the leader is very pro-regeneration, pro-development, and wanted to make things happen. I think we had the opportunities in terms of the land, the schemes that we'd already master planned, the things that we had already in the estates programme that were churning through Gascoigne, etc., those type of things. I think we've had strong commissioning from the council's inclusive growth team, and more recently, it's under consultation at the moment, a new inclusive growth strategy and delivery plan that aligns to our agenda in terms of our programme. We've sort of now built on that and got a strong track record of delivery, the relationship that we have with the GLA in terms of the funding. We've proved that we can deliver, and that strengthens that relationship as well. And I think, things like winning this award will again help sort of just to try and, sort of underpin that we've got that track record now and we can move forward.
I was going to ask you, I want to unpick a little bit of that, but I was going to ask you about the award, winning the award. I mean, you have mentioned it puts you under more pressure, and I can see that awards do that, but has it had any benefits? I think you were just beginning to allude to something then.
Yeah, I mean, I think we are a tech-all company, but we can work, as you know, do work with other people. So I think it's probably put more people to our door to want to know how we've done it. But obviously we've got to make sure that we're not, it's great to be, sort of assisting others, but we've got to make sure that obviously we're doing that in a way that we can sort of get some benefit for ourselves for that as well. So, things like working with other boroughs to help them, and our planning consultancy team being around to sort of navigate some of the planning issues that we've had taking our programme through. I think our relationship with our planning team has been key to that, key to our delivery.
Can I just add, I can see Tristan, hi Tristan, on the chat asking, and I was thinking about you, Tristan, because of your desire always to try and move your development team, out into the sort of arena Jenny's described, where you have a bit of freedom and space to hire more people, pay market rates. I know that was always a desire and a vision of yours, but you're asking a very good question there, I think, about the planning performance, which makes you, I guess, as Tristan points out, Jenny, promoter and kind of regulator there, gatekeeper and poacher. How do you manage that in planning terms?
We manage it by being very, very, we have a very clear structure and clear roles and responsibilities, and making sure that we do work with our planning team, and it has helped us, but they do not cross the line. And to be honest with you, if I'm absolutely honest, they're harder on us than they are on others. because they expect the best from us. And that would be something that we definitely don't get out of jail. Definitely don't get out of jail.
I can imagine.
But that sort of symbiotic relationship works really well because we've got that, that we know what they expect. So we can't go in half-hearted. We can't go in, like not hitting all the buttons, because we know what they expect and we know what the borough expects. So we can't do that. So that's what I'd say about that relationship. You'd need my colleagues in planning probably to go into that for Tristan with a bit more detail.
Yeah.
But that would be my sort of overview of the situation.
We should explain to viewers that Tristan Samuels is at Portsmouth, isn't he? Running the regeneration programme down in Portsmouth, but used to be a colleague of yours, Barbara, I think.
He did indeed. He led Westminster's development team for a good while before I got there, and brought the amazing Dudley House out the ground, which is, one of the first big affordable housing schemes not in the HRA that Westminster pursued. So, absolutely all over direct delivery. And kicked it off there, Westminster, really. Sorry, you wanted to ask Toby?
Yeah, I was going to ask about one of the things that most impressed us in judging for the awards was your record during COVID, Jenny, of delivering hundreds of new homes all the way through the lockdown process. Do you want to just talk us through a little bit about how you managed that as an organisation, and what advantages you had maybe as an arm's length company, as a separate company from the council in doing that? If at all.
I think Pat was obviously our managing director at the time, and he was very clear right from day one that we would, we switched to working from home almost before the official lockdown happened, which I think helped a bit. We were, a little bit more organised around our sort of working from home type arrangements. I think what did help our delivery, we actually only, I think, had one scheme that shut down out of all of our schemes. And I can't remember how many we had at the time, but on site, but it's probably around 6 or 7 that were under construction at the time. And we only had one that stopped. Now, a lot of that was luck because we were at the early stages of those projects. So social distancing when you're doing things like groundworks and prep stuff is much easier than when you might be at the later stages when you're doing, your finishes indoors and people are all sort of working on top of each other. So actually, I think, a lot of it was around the way we were structured, the move to home working. We did a lot of things to support staff while we were under lockdown. We brought in programs of sort of like, mindfulness and stuff like that, which, beforehand, I wouldn't have really supported we needed or thought we needed, but actually it was really good. We did sort of like socials and things to keep teams together. I think it was just a mixture of all those things, and maybe, as I say, having a program that was at the stage where we were actually able to work with contractors to keep things moving, because we were at that sort of stage in projects.
There's always a bit of luck involved in success.
The decant team did shut down for about 5 or 6 months. We moved as much as we could online, but it was, that's a very face-to-face person type of stuff that we do. Leasehold buybacks and the estates type of decant work really does need to be face-to-face, and that was quite tricky.
There is another question in the chat, but just before we get there, because it's moving us into the technical area of finance, cost inflation, which we must cover. Can I just ask you one more thing, Jenny, about the success, the overall, why this? Because yes, you had land, you have a leader who is growth oriented, absolutely, and strong and passionate about that. I think the whole of London would see that from the beginning. But to be fair, so have other places. So have other places had those things, and it hasn't held together. Somehow the shareholder has trusted entirely Be First in a way that I think has been difficult to achieve in other boroughs. Is there anything around that you can put your finger on as to why it worked?
I think it comes down to relationships a lot of the time. The trust element, or especially, is around the relationship. Most of the senior management team of Be First were actually appointed and worked alongside us when we were still in the council for a while, and that probably helped, you know, sort of bring that relationship through from the earliest embryonic stage of Be First with the senior management team coming through. Yeah, I mean, I do think it is a lot about trust and relationships, and the relationships that we built with our commissioners and our shareholder to make sure that, you know, and it hasn't been without, I mean, I'm probably making it sound very easy, and it wasn't. It was, you know, there are always going to be challenges, and I'm sure, you know, there have been some very challenging times for us going through in our delivery programme. But, you know, as I think, the ambition, if your ambition is aligned and you are all go into it with an attitude that you want to do it and get on with it, that would be the key thing for me.
Jenny, this is such a crucial issue. I think this is the point on which many of these enterprises succeed or fail. So I'm going to dig a little bit deeper by asking a question that Helen Horn has put into the Q&A, which is, you talked about strong commissioning from the council. Have there been times when the benefits for the company haven't aligned with the benefits for the council? So is it just like a different way of approaching the same question?
I can't think of anything off the top of my head. There have been. There are bound to be. And, you know, I mean, we are set up, as I say, you know, as a company that returns a surplus. So you've got that sort of balance, haven't you, of the shareholder wanting that surplus and us, you know, having the challenges for delivery and sort of trying to balance that off. And I think maybe there have been times where we've not done things that are wholly aligned, but you've got to balance the sort of the two joint agendas, really, to make sure that, you know, you've got that going through. We've got to carry on having a viable business plan as well, and that needs to be kept forefront as well.
For me, the way you have managed, or, you know, it presumably at every level, you know, from your MD and downwards, to get the council to understand that balance is, you know, is really brilliant. It's really brilliant. It's obviously worked at Be First, and I think other places have not somehow managed to get the council to understand that. If one goes down, both go down. If one succeeds, both succeed. And exactly. It's kind of the basis of a local authority company, which sounds very simple, but it's not that simple to get across to a local authority that is used to always delivering its own stuff and taking responsibility for its own stuff completely. I think it's well done, very well done.
Another thing you've managed to do, Jenny, is you've managed to absorb a large number of public sector employees, staff, into a private sector organisation. So how was that transition, and how did the culture change? How did you manage to engender a different culture, if you did?
I think we have engendered a different culture. I think the culture is very different, and I will be honest, it didn't suit everybody. You know, and people did leave, and you know, we've still got a certain amount of turnover, as everybody has at the moment, you know, post-COVID, etc. But you know, most people, we were discussing this yesterday at our away day, actually. About staff turnover and retention, but most people leave to go on to better posts and better jobs, and that's a good thing, because that means you know, there's more people out there in the industry, and you know, people have learned a huge amount working at Be First. We've been going at a pretty frantic speed, but actually some people have really shone during that period of time and been able to, you know, sort of you know, been able to stretch their skills in different ways because of the way that we're set up, whereas, you know, sort of maybe within the council structure that wouldn't have happened.
A lot of what we've been talking about so far has boiled down to relationships, all of that stuff about balancing the needs of the council and the needs of the company and so on. That's a real kind of personal trust issues between the leadership of both organisations, isn't it? And Barbara, I think you wanted to dig into a bit the changes in that situation.
Yeah. I mean, clearly there are some major changes going on, Jenny, and we can't have a conversation with Barking and Dagenham without mentioning them. And Pat moving on, but also John Cruddas standing down. You know, huge changes. I mean, do you think
the leader, Darren,
Darren being chosen as MP, leaving. So Pat and Darren, the two kind of people who certainly from the outside we feel were the core and the engine of direct delivery in Barking and Dagenham, both go in separate ways. How do you think that will affect?
I mean, it's bound to have some effect, isn't it? But and it, as I say, we were on away day yesterday, and Darren was asked exactly that question: how are things going to change when you go? And his answer was that he feels that he's left the place in good shape. That the people that support him, he is the leader, but he has a very strong cabinet and deputy leaders who are aligned totally to his ambitions. And in terms of the council, our relationship with the shareholder, we are going to have a new MD, and that will change things. And sort of that's going to be around January time that we'll get a new MD in post. The key shareholder people at the moment obviously are the acting chief exec and the finance director, and as I say, they've been aligned to the delivery and what we're doing at the moment as well. So I think there's some constancy there in terms of the deputy leaders and the people within the senior management team at LBBD. There is going to be some change for us, but again, we're a very strong senior management team that sort of again want to continue to deliver and have that strong relationship. And we're probably going to have to work at it a bit. That when things change, you do have to work at it a bit. You might have to come at it from a slightly different angle, but that's the way the world is, isn't it? And we will have to deal with that.
Yeah, fair enough. A good answer, Jenny. I think you've covered it all.
Yes.
And we all hope it really we hope it works. It's that work, the acknowledgement of working at it, isn't it? It's about relationships. If there's new people, you've got to get them to that level of understanding, and they have to trust again.
And of course, they've got to operate in completely different circumstances. And Dabansu's asking a question about that in the chat, and we're going to move on to that. It's going to be the second part of this conversation. But before we do that, there are a couple of questions come into the Q&A that I think are worth just running through. They relate back to the sort of setting the scene part of the conversation. So Helen at Oxford is asking about the percentage of delivery of social rent. How are you making schemes viable? And I guess that's over the last few years since set up, and then we can move on to what's changing. And we've got another question from an anonymous attendee, but it's not mischievous in any way. Can Jenny expand on the housing mix that's being delivered and how viability works without cross subsidy from private sales? So let's address that.
Okay, where do you want me to go first? The percentage of social rent?
Yeah, percentage of social rent, and then move on to how you've built viability.
Our percentage of social rent is actually quite high because, and we do count London affordable rent because we consider that to be we consider anything that's let to anybody on the housing register. So those properties through Reside will go to people that are on the housing register. It's actually quite high. I can't remember the actual the percentage off the top of my head at the moment. It's around 20%, I think. And it's because we have got quite a lot of reprovision through our estates programme. So we keep, but a lot of the estates programme that we have was 1 and 2 bedroom properties. And obviously we reprovide very often on a floor space basis so that we make sure that we get the 3, 4 and 5 bed properties that we need coming through the programme. The second part was about the viability, wasn't it? About we are being severely challenged by inflation, cost escalation in construction, sort of like just the general impact of the economy on our long-term cash flow type assumptions and everything that everybody else is dealing with at the moment.
Jenny, I want to dig into that in more detail in a second, but up until the crisis, up until the current crisis, so in the previous crises, how were you managing viability? How did you set that up in the first place?
Well, I mean, we have hurdles that we have to meet within the council's investment programme, and we use subsidy from the GLA in respect of our affordable housing programme. We had we started off with a relatively small building council homes for Londoners allocation, which we grew because our programme grew. So we actually ended up, I think, with one of the biggest allocations under that programme. So we had an amount of subsidy that was in the programme from that. The council have a fair amount of right to buy receipts that we've used to support the affordable rent programme. And obviously we cross-subsidise with some of the private rent. And that's how we've made it stack up. But that obviously was in the past, and now in the future, going forward, yeah, things are a lot more challenging. And we're having to start to look at, examine a lot of that in a lot more detail to see how we can make it work in the future and going forward.
Thanks, Jenny. Barbara.
Yeah, can I just ask, Jenny, did you always make it every scheme viable, or do you do it over a bit of a programme? Because the only way I've ever made it work when I run these things is over about 3 or maybe 4 sites. And to do that because you'll get easier and more difficult sites. And sometimes, you know, you really have to put a lot of money into some of the difficult sites, particularly in a London borough. So I'm interested, did you make at the beginning, were you making every
at the beginning, it was very much everything stood on its own. It went through the gateway process, it got approval at the council's investment panel, and we moved on. But as increasingly, obviously, we've had to look at it on a portfolio level. And now all the work we've done around viability is very much looking at it on a programme level and looking at where we've got things like estate schemes that need to provide a lot more of the social rent type housing and are not so viable, and the other stuff that may be more viable that can support it.
Yeah, that makes real sense. Yeah.
Can I move on again within the existing programme and kind of up until now? Because Debansu is asking a question about whether you've delivered on MMC, whether you've used modular offsite construction methods, and there's another question in there about working with other local authorities, isn't there? And the buyers club idea that originated with Be First. So can you expand a bit on your sort of MMC programme?
I mean, we have delivered MMC both through temporary accommodation and as part of our main programme. And the design team have been working on our pattern book, which is our sort of standardisation programme to make sure that we can standardise our delivery across the different typologies to be able to have a framework both of contractors and of you know, secondary suppliers of MMC elements. I think where we have got to, it would be fair to say, although design colleagues might say this better than I, is that the volumetric, we're not really seeing that coming forward as our main way of delivering MMC. We're looking much more at a kit of parts and the different elements that we might be able to use within our programme. Pat, when he first started at Be First, had a parade, and I mean a parade of people through offering up all sorts of different MMC solutions and programs and all sorts of stuff. And I think he then started to talk to other local authorities about how we might aggregate delivery across that. But I think that has evolved really, and we are now talking to, I mean, we have got a number of authorities that we've been talking to through what has been called the Buyers Club. And we are now sort of meeting with them regularly. They're probably going to sort of look to, you know, have a slightly sort of elected independent chair from within that group that sort of deals with, you know, sort of the issues around the group coming together. And we're sort of marching on a bit more with our framework and our sort of supplier framework in terms of the elements, and seeing where we can put things together like that, rather than it being about, you know, a set of people that all come together and all do the same type of stuff. The pattern book is flexible enough that it can still have, you know, the designs can still be in context with what the borough wants, but that sort of standardisation is really sort of underpins what we might be able to do in terms of delivery and getting some aggregation and getting some cost savings for people across their programmes.
Fantastic. And I guess one of the other questions I had lined up was around the sorts of support you've had. You mentioned funding from the GLA and so on. Have you looked for support from other sources? Has Homes England played a role? Who have you, and what sort of role have the private sector played beyond the MMC angle that you mentioned. You know, how important have your relationships with the private sector been? How helpful have they been? How threatened do they feel by a development company?
No, well, I think one of the elements of our programme that I haven't really touched on is the fact that we are doing a number of what we call turnkey projects with local developers. I think that's probably where you were going with that question. So, you know, and we have actually enabled schemes to go forward by taking the affordable elements of developer-led schemes across the borough. And it's been quite a successful programme for us, actually. It's, you know, the value of that delivery has been quite good value for us. And, you know, there are also always going to be challenges around specification, quality, getting the right types of product within that type of programme. But I think if you start early enough in those discussions, and bearing in mind some of those programmes are projects within big wider programmes that we know the council and everybody's had a long-term relationship with, things like Beam Park, Barking Riverside, some of the stuff along the Abbey Road Roding corridor. So we have actually had quite successful delivery, and we'll continue to, you know, sort of develop that as we go forward. Homes England have supported some of the have supported, I think, some of the work around the pattern book, but our main contact obviously has been with the GLA.
Can I jump in, Toby? I'm just really interested because I agree with you that turnkey projects are a risk, much less risky and very good value way of adding you know, affordable stock to a council's books. And I did very similar in Westminster and bought a section 106 on Edgware Road. I'm also aware it doesn't do much for your relationship with your local housing associations. Well, has there been any discussion about that in LBD? You know, if you're doing it on a regular basis, do you have local housing associations there?
We've had a few key players that have been around and been developing in the borough and have long-term relationships with us. If some people might know that we actually delivered the first phase of the Gascoigne with what was East Thames and became L&Q. So, you know, and the likes of Clarion and Peabody have got big programmes in the borough. We don't have a lot of smaller associations looking to take Section 106 type units. I don't think we've really trodden on anyone's toes, because I think the numbers that we're taking, the RPs that we've got working in the borough have got their own stuff going on. We're not really treading on their toes. They wouldn't want that type of smaller type stuff that we're taking in the turnkey world. So I think it's probably worked because of that balance, because they've got their own things going on.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Barbara, I feel that for our viewers' sake, we want to be inclusive and welcoming, and there may be viewers out there who aren't aware of this, so I'm going to do a tiny bit of explaining. Barbara, your question just now came from your background, your previous role before you were CEO at Soho Housing Association. We should mention that you ran Westminster Council's wholly owned company, development company, Westminster Builds. And the other thing that I feel that we ought to unpack slightly is we've mentioned Pat and Darren. We haven't really explained who they are. There may be, it's hard to believe, there may be someone on the planet or in the housing world who doesn't know that Pat Hayes was managing director of Be First and is now, I think, director of regen and property at Slough Council. And Darren is Councillor Darren Rodwell, the leader of Barking and Dagenham Council, who is standing for MP in the next election, whenever that is. So I'll just set that out for everyone and then hand back to Barbara to take us into questions, I guess, about the future.
Okay, I have, can I just ask one thing? I don't know if this is future or not really, hopefully it's future. Jenny, there's always that thing with a local authority housing company, which is about the income stream back to the council. Some councils are very clear about what they ring fence it for, and, you know, advertise it as such and make quite a play on it. How is that done in Barking and Dagenham? Is it just absorbed into general finance, or are you supporting something very particular in the borough that otherwise would not get done?
Yeah, I mean, I think generally it's absorbed into the borough meeting the challenges that any London borough has to its budget around delivering vital services. you know, overspends in every sort of department that have those type of challenges. You know, generally, it isn't ring fenced to my knowledge for any one particular reason, but definitely we were set up to make sure that the council could continue to deliver its vital services, and our surplus would contribute to that.
Right, okay, interesting. I know others have said we will do regeneration with it, or we will try and do something about homelessness with it. But yeah, everyone has their own priorities, so I can really see that. I guess if Toby's asking us to move a little bit to the future, and we do have a couple of questions in that area about making it work now and going forward. Building, how do you build business cases for the next phase? We have a few questions, I think, looking at costs. I'm just bringing up the second one. You've used a large amount of right to buy funding. How are you going forward? Are you working? This is from John Murray. Are you looking to work with external investment partners going forward in the same way housing associations do? So is there any feeling you're looking for funds in a different way? And how are you making those business cases stack up now, Jenny?
Well, we are, as you know, we're funded through the council's IAS, so the borrowing is managed by the council, and obviously it would be for them to look for different funding sources on that question. How are we making things stack up? Yeah, that's a really interesting question, because I think we're all at that point where we've got direct delivery of you know, sort of looking at things more closely. I don't think we will be moving forward quite as quickly as we have in the past. I think we'll be much more slow, much more considered around our delivery, and it will take longer to put those business cases together. In terms of stopping delivery, we've still got large elements of estate schemes that we're on site delivering and phases yet to deliver. So we owe it to the people across those estates to keep the momentum going as quickly as we possibly can, albeit that it might slow down slightly while we, you know, consider the challenges. You know, there was a lot of stargazing yesterday in our away day about how long these challenges might last for. And I think that's interesting. I think more that sort of, more will happen around maybe people having assumptions about how long some of these challenges will last for, and when we might be able to see some, you know, light at the end of the tunnel to move forward. Yeah, I don't know whether I've answered the question correctly there. Well, really
actually,
sorry.
Can I think just a little bit about the borrowing versus working with developers piece? Because yes, I do understand technically your funding comes through your council, and you know, they either borrow it or they have it in the bank or however they choose to do it. But quite separately, obviously, BFIRST could work with another partner who had their own funds. And, you know, either you could propose to the council you did that, or the council could propose to you did it, because things are getting tougher. And I just wondered if there'd been any discussion like that, or is it still, you know, everything through the council, everything through BFIRST? It might slow down, but that's, you know, the financial model we're sticking to.
I don't think we've made any firm decisions about that, and I don't think it's the right time to do that, to be honest with you. I think, you know, if options came up that worked and, you know, the shareholder was on board and everybody thought it was the right way to move forward, it could happen. I think at the moment we just need to be really super creative and looking at all of the different ways that we can keep delivery going. And I can't really say much more about that than that at the current time. I think we'd look at anything that kept us moving.
Jenny, you're saying that the delivery program is going to slow down, or is slowing down. So how much of that is due to the changing circumstances that we're operating in, and of those circumstances, what is the biggest challenge that you face, and how much of it is because you've already delivered a lot of the quick wins, you know, and the program was just going to get tougher anyway?
It's about 50-50. I think the program was going to get tougher. Yeah, we've marched on with a lot of what was in the bank, if you like, in terms of projects, and the ones that we're going forward with now in our portfolio, even if they don't have some of the estate type regeneration challenges, still have other things that we've got to do to get residents and the communities on board about bringing, intensification to some of the areas that we're looking at, and stuff like that. So I think, so sort of 50% of it is the challenges that we've got from the economy and from construction cost inflation and stuff that's going on in the industry generally. And the other part of that is that, we were always going to get to a point where, some of maybe the more straightforward stuff had been done in the programme, and that we needed to regroup, if you like, and spend a bit more time doing early stuff. I mean, I run the engagement team. We're doing a lot more early engagement on the projects coming forward in the portfolio. That's sort of about sort of building trust and relationships with the communities that we're going to be working in the future. And that is really front prep work to make sure that we can, when we're ready to go forward, move forward with some of the stuff that we would like to do in the future, and take the communities and the residents sort of on that journey with us, rather than hitting, buffers around objections and stuff like that.
Thanks, Jenny. Do you? I mean, our viewers are sort of split in terms of the biggest challenge being, political uncertainty, inflation, supplier staffing shortages. Do you agree with that? And also, I'm really interested that no one has mentioned their own staffing shortages. Is recruitment an issue for you at the moment?
I think our turnover is at about 20%. I think we'd like it to be slightly lower, but I think we have been impacted by everybody calls it the Great Resignation, don't they? People moving on after COVID. We haven't struggled so far. I'm not sure whether, and again, going right back to where we started, winning awards and the sort of the quality, the type of stuff that's coming forward for us around, a slight shift in emphasis from more residential to sort of like more commercial and economic regeneration, working with things like the city markets, the film studios. We've got one of the first stacked industrial schemes being built out at the moment over on the Thames Road area. I still think that we've got a lot to offer people coming into Be First in terms of the range of work that they can get involved in. There's very few companies, I think, or local authority companies that would offer some of the commercial types of regeneration and development projects that we've got for people to get their teeth into. And a lot of people come from the private sector into Be First, and it is their first role within a local authority type context. They all look a bit cross-eyed after they've been there a few months, but I think they're all quite enjoying the challenge.
Okay, God, there's so much we haven't mentioned, and we haven't mentioned carbon reduction. I've got something burning in the back of my brain about balancing with investment in your current stock, and has that affected the programme? Given the news we've had about a child dying from damp and mould in the stock up north, given fire safety, the huge emphasis on investing in current stock, has that in any way affected your programme? And equally, I'm dying to know where you are on carbon reduction. So either or both, Jenny, if you had any thoughts.
Well, I'm not quite the right person to have a really technical conversation on carbon reduction about, but yes, it is forefront in our mind. Forefront in our mind.
Take it
especially around, and the fire safety stuff as well, because that's had an impact on current schemes that we've got in delivery, because we've had to change and think around design and implications for fire safety in our current programme. So that's all there. So so back to my obviously, again, maybe Toby, I should explain. I worked in the council for a considerable amount of time before I came over to Be First, and I have worked within the housing team at Barking and Dagenham, and I've even managed the housing stock there. So I have a pretty good understanding of the quality of the stock. And I think one of the things I would say is that we have removed a lot of the poorest quality through the estates programme that's been going on since about 2006-07. So it's been going on a long while. It's taken out most of, I think we've only got 4 left of the large panel system blocks in the borough. We had 22 and we've only got 4 left. So that's eroded quite a lot of the issues around black mold and thermal comfort and fire safety, etc. in those blocks. But I would say that there is obviously still the requirement, I think, and the council have acknowledged it, and because we deliver the estates programme, we've had to work very closely with the council around their sort of ambitions for a refresh on their asset strategy and their stock condition. And I think some of those things around what it's going to take to bring some of the existing poor stock up to quality, and the implications of things like that tragedy with the young child and the black mold and the fire safety could change the emphasis of our programme going forward, but we're not quite there yet because that work's still sort of moving through. Yeah, it's an interesting time really, because we've got a programme that identifies future estates programmes based on anecdotal evidence around the condition and quality of that stock, but retrofit and properly assessing what it's going to cost to retrofit some of that could change some of those assumptions. And that's where sort of we're at the cusp of that at the moment. I think the council working on its asset management strategy and stock condition work a bit more to get a sort of, you know, credible business plan and move forward.
Can I ask, in terms of moving forward, Jenny, are you looking to diversify the programme at all, or the way that you approach the programme? So are you looking at setting up other businesses or other ways of achieving the objectives that the council has set out for itself?
I wouldn't say there's anything around setting up separate businesses. Obviously, we have structured ourselves to be able to do some of the commercial stuff that we've done with subsidiaries, but I wouldn't say there was any requirement or any need to think about sort of extra subsidiaries. I think, as I've said, I think I've touched on the fact that there is a move towards focusing on commercial and economic regeneration, commercial development and economic regeneration, and that sort of side of the programme. I think we've done an awful lot with resident development, but if you look at the stats in Barking and Dagenham around unemployment and jobs and skills and education, we've still got a long way to go, and that sort of side of the programme is going to take a slight precedence to respond to some of those things going forward.
And our viewers, a number of our viewers are looking at setting up new joint ventures, which prompts the question, doesn't it? What's your appetite for joint venture working with the private sector?
We continue to talk about joint ventures. We haven't got any at the moment, but we do continue to talk about them. I noticed that you put in your question about setting up an RP, and obviously Reside, which is our sort of sister organisation, which is the council's wholly owned housing company, is going through the registration process at the moment with the regulator to set up an element of it as an RP. So I think we're trying to respond to stuff around that, but I don't think there's any sort of like major plans at the moment to set up separate subsidiaries.
Yeah, well, I'm always more interested in like public-public partnerships. I always think more innovative, you know, and you did, I guess, where you are with that is around the pattern book, isn't it? Yeah. More than actually developing with anyone, I'm guessing. There's no physical joining up anywhere. You're not looking at building with neighbours in any way.
No, not at the moment, but the pattern book, yeah, that pattern book work is definitely where we're going to try and lead on that sort of, you know, public type partnership work. And you could do a whole webinar on the pattern book with our design colleagues, and that would be really interesting to people, I think.
I think that sounds like a great idea, Jenny. And I was just going to ask, are you welcoming other local authorities wherever they might be to sort of join you in that?
We've only focused on working with London at the moment, but we have done some some exploration and you know, visits and sort of study type stuff, I think, with other local authorities. I mean, I've spoken to colleagues that have gone on to work in other local authorities across the country about the Be First setup, because obviously, you know, people like Bournemouth, etc., have done similar things and have spoken to us. So, you know, I think we've done a lot of work with other people that have had the same ambitions and wanted to hear about what we've been doing. And they have been outside London.
Great stuff. Thanks. Now, Barbara, if you don't have anything else that you really want to probe on, I've got one question for you both really, to finish on, and it refers back to the title of the webinar, which is the municipal entrepreneurs, which was Pat Hayes's phrase. And I just want to ask you both whether you think that what you think of the role of a local authority as a municipal entrepreneur, that kind of commercial kind of approach to doing good for local residents, and whether the current crisis, the current circumstances that we find ourselves in, maybe makes that role even more important, and that we should be looking to the public sector to do more delivery of housing and development.
Well, if I may,
yeah.
I mean, I personally, my whole heart and work has been around believing that local authorities should own their patch, deliver everything that's required in that patch. They are the best people to do that. And I think they need to be entrepreneurial. You know, you could take the first people to bring in clean water, the first people to do good housing, the first people to do proper sanitation. Local authorities are fabulously inventive, I believe. They have, you know, they have AAA rating. They clearly are using public funds, right? So you do not take ludicrous risk, but they are big. They have really good credit rating. Nobody knows their patch or the need in that patch like a local authority. They usually and hopefully own a lot of land, which makes them pretty solid. And I think they should use all of those things to be as entrepreneurial as possible. I mean, you know, all said within a balanced risk profile. But yes, they have to intervene, I think, in their area. That's where I would be.
Jenny, do you see yourself as a municipal entrepreneur? What does that mean to you?
Well, I mean, I think as someone that's worked for Barking and Dagenham for a very long while, I've seen firsthand the, you know, sort of the issues that the residents, you know, are facing in their day-to-day lives. You know, we've still got very high child poverty, you know, high unemployment, and in order to, some of the things we do don't sometimes always strike us that they've got that instant knock-on effect to that, and they probably haven't, but they do play out. And if we are getting the things that Barbara's just talked about right, we should be improving the life chances and everything else around the people that live in the borough. And I just think sometimes being a municipal entrepreneur it's a great expression, but actually it's just about making sure that you've got that thread between what you're doing and how that ends up in terms of how it plays out for the residents and the people that live and work and, you know, do everything in the borough, and just making sure that you keep that there, I think.
Jenny, that's a fantastic place to end. It's going to be our last word today. So viewers, please join me in thanking, in congratulating the Willmott Dixon Direct Delivery Team of the Year, Be First.
I'm not the team, I'm just one person.
You're representing a team though, and pass our congratulations on to the whole team. And thank you, Jenny Coombs, for taking part today, and thank you, Barbara Brownlee, for taking part today. And as the virtual applause is rippling around the internet, we'll also thank Willmott Dixon for having the foresight to sponsor these new awards. And most of all, viewers, thank you for, again, joining us and tuning in and paying attention and fueling the conversation with some really good questions. If there's anything left hanging, join our LinkedIn members club and you'll find responses circulated there over the coming days. And speaking of the coming days, we're going to be back on Thursday in a week at a new time of midday with the London Construction Programme and special guests TfL, the GLA and the London Legacy Development Corporation. We're going to be looking at significant new interventions to get rid of bad behaviour and improve diversity on building sites. Now, if you want to do any work in London, you're going to need to understand these measures. So join us for that important session on the 8th of December at noon, and you can use links in the chat now or find them at threefox.co.uk. But in the meantime, from our fantastic panel, from Willmott Dixon, from me, and from everyone at Three Fox, good afternoon.